You have probably been told that you overthink, that you think too much, that you read too deeply into things, that you should just let things go. And over time, you may have started to believe that something about how you think is a problem, that you are making things more complicated than they need to be. So you start to second-guess yourself. You notice something and then immediately question it. Was that real, or did I imagine it? Am I reading too much into this? Should I just ignore it? And slowly, you begin to disconnect from your own observations. But this is where it becomes important. Because not everything that looks like overthinking is actually overthinking. Sometimes you are noticing patterns. Let me explain this properly. There is a difference between thinking repeatedly without direction and recognizing something that does not fully make sense yet. Overthinking often creates confusion. It circles. It repeats without resolution. Pattern recognition moves differently. It connects. It observes. It builds meaning over time. But from the inside, the two can feel very similar. And that is where the confusion begins. Let me bring this into something real. You may notice small changes in how someone speaks to you. A slightly different tone. A delayed response. A shift in energy that doesn't quite match what is being said. Nothing obvious. Nothing you can clearly prove. But enough to feel different. And your mind returns to it. Not because you want to analyze it, but because something does not align. Or you leave a conversation and something stays with you. Not the words exactly, but the feeling. And later, your mind revisits it, trying to understand what it was. And from the outside, that looks like overthinking. But internally, it is something else. It is your mind trying to make sense of a pattern. Now here is where it deepens. Pattern recognition often happens before clarity. You notice something before you understand it. And that gap creates repetition. Because your mind is still processing. Now let's take this further. This doesn't only happen in conversations. It shows up in decisions. You may feel unsure about something, even when it looks right on paper. Everything makes sense logically. Everything seems fine externally. But something does not sit properly. And your mind returns to it. Not to create doubt, but to understand what does not fully fit. Or you may notice patterns in your own life where you feel more drained, where you feel more energized. What consistently works? What consistently doesn't? And your mind begins to connect those patterns. Quietly. Gradually. Now here is the part most people miss. When you are noticing patterns, your mind is connecting information over time. It is not reacting to one moment. It is recognizing consistency. And consistency is what creates meaning. But because that meaning is not immediate, it feels like overthinking. Especially when other people don't notice the same things. Or when they respond differently. So you begin to doubt yourself. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. Maybe it's nothing. But the pattern continues. And that matters. Because not every repeated thought comes from anxiety. Some come from awareness that has not yet been fully understood. Now here is the shift. You don't need to believe every thought you have. But you also don't need to dismiss everything you notice. There is a middle space where you observe without reacting immediately, where you allow patterns to become clearer over time, without forcing conclusions. And that changes everything. Because now, your thinking becomes structured. Not chaotic. Not overwhelming. Just more precise. You begin to recognize what is consistent. What keeps showing up. What actually matters. And over time, what once felt like overthinking begins to make sense. So if you have been telling yourself that you overthink too much, pause. You may not be overthinking everything. You may simply be noticing patterns before they become obvious. And once you learn to observe without rushing, your thinking becomes clearer, not louder, not more chaotic, just more accurate. And that is not a flaw. It is a form of intelligence that most people haven't learned how to use yet.